The Prime Minister fired back at the premiers and the federal Conservatives who are demanding he pause the increase to the federal carbon price. That price went up today from $65 to $80 per tonne, and that means many Canadians will pay more to gas up their cars and to heat their homes. Justin Trudeau defended the carbon tax, saying it fights climate change and actually puts money back in the pockets of Canadians through a rebate. And he reminded premiers and provinces that the provinces themselves have the choice to set up their own carbon pricing program.
All those premiers that are busy complaining about the price on pollution, but not putting forward a concrete alternative that they think would be better for their communities, are just playing politics. Every province has the opportunity to put forward its own plan, as long as they are fighting climate change to the same level that we're asking all other Canadians to do. That's what a federal backstop is. But we're not seeing detailed plans from the premiers on this. They'd much rather try to complain about it and make political hay out of this.
For further details on the new tax hike and the rebates, the CBC's Marianne Demain explains how all of this impacts you.
Well, Abby, it is important to note that while this applies to the entire country, there are some exceptions, particularly when it comes to British Columbia, as well as the Northwest Territories that have their own charge for carbon, and then Quebec has its own cap and trade system. But for everyone else, you will notice an impact when it comes to your bottom line, that impact on your wallet, because there very much is one, especially if you're going to the pumps. Let's break it down, starting with gasoline. Gasoline, the liter of gas is up 3.3 cents a liter. That means it will cost you about $1.65 more to fill up a 50-liter tank of gas. Diesel up slightly higher. The price per liter for that is up about 4 cents. Now, when we're talking about propane, the price per liter is up just over 2 cents, which means it costs close to 40 cents more to fill a standard barbecue propane tank. And for natural gas, the carbon price is up just under 3 cents to 15.3 cents a cubic meter. Maybe hard to wrap your head around exactly what that means, but to break that down, for the average Canadian household, that means about $65 more a year to pay for things like heating. Now, there has been a lot of controversy leading up to today's carbon tax increase, as well as a lot of pushback, not only from Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, but also from several premiers all across Canada who have been calling on Ottawa to put a pause on today's planned increase. We know that the premiers of Saskatchewan, as well as Alberta, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, they spoke out at a House of Commons committee hearing on carbon pricing, not only calling for this pause, but also citing concerns about the rising cost of living. We also know that the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador wrote a letter to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau asking for, again, not only a pause today, but also for a meeting to discuss alternatives. Now, in response to this pushback, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has challenged premiers who don't like the carbon tax to come up with their own credible alternative. And we know at this point that the Premier of Manitoba has said he will take up the Prime Minister on that challenge. Now, leading up to April 1st today, of course, this planned increase taking effect today, we have been speaking to a lot of economists, many who say that this plan works. Here's more on that.
Well, carbon price is the lowest cost approach to reduce emissions. It gives each person and each business this flexibility to choose the best way to reduce their carbon footprint without imposing particular technology choices. So in other words, the carbon price works because when fossil fuels cost more, people use less of them. This is basic economics.
And that is essentially what the carbon tax is for, to try to burn less fossil fuels and to move Canadians towards greener alternatives. Abby.
Marianne, the federal government is touting these rebates, but what can most Canadians expect here? What more can you tell us about these rebates?
Yes, because part of the conversation leading up to today was how much this would cost Canadians, but there's also a rebate, which means money is coming back to Canadians. And it all is based on your household situation, not your household income, based on how many people are actually living in your home. So let's look at the breakdown, starting first with what this would mean if you are a single adult. You can see the layout of all of the provinces on your screen. Alberta, $225. Saskatchewan, for instance, $188. Going further east, Prince Edward Island, $110, and Newfoundland and Labrador, $149. Now, looking at what this would be for a quarterly payment for a family of four, because these are quarterly payments, Alberta, $450, for instance, Saskatchewan, $376, and then looking over there, Nova Scotia, $206. And again, this would all be based on your family makeup. How many people are in there? And for Atlantic provinces, 1/3 of the households there use heating oil, which is exempt from the carbon tax. Here's more from one economist about this rebate.
About 80% of Canadians are going to get back more than they pay. Now, I lead a relatively low carbon lifestyle. What does that mean? I only have one car. I don't have gas-powered toys like motorcycles or skidoos or ATVs. I only live in one house. I don't have a cottage or a second place someplace else. If you're a fairly wealthy Canadian who have all of those extra trappings, no, you're not better off. In fact, you're given an incentive through the carbon tax to reduce your carbon footprint.
Now, as for when these payments will come, again, they are quarterly payments. The first one, Abby, is expected sometime around April 15th.
Protesters in Alberta are staging multiple rallies across the province in protest of the federal carbon tax.
It's making life difficult for a lot of people. I watch seniors struggling now, and the future generations of Canada are really going to suffer. So it needs to stop.
RVs and vehicles with Canadian flags could be seen lined up beside major roads. Officials expect there will be delays for drivers near Cochrane and Edmonton. The protesters oppose the carbon tax and blame it for the high cost of living. More rallies are planned in the coming days across various parts of the country. So how do farmers view this tax and how will it impact them? To discuss this, we're going to be joined now by Jeff Harrison in Quinte West, Ontario. He's the chair of Grain Farmers of Ontario. Mr. Harrison, thank you very much for making the time to speak to CBC News. Can you talk to us about how all of this impacts your livelihood? Because, you know, all morning we've been talking about broad numbers and averages, but how does all of this impact you and your family?
Well, thank you very much for having me. The carbon tax has been an issue in front of farmers, specifically grain farmers here in Ontario, for 6 years now. And it's been an escalating tax that has just driven up our cost of productions. It's been a mental burden on farmers. The federal government has just not listened to farmers' needs, and it is making us globally uncompetitive. This is a cost of production that is money that could be spent in other areas of our farm much more wisely and help drive grain farmers and the economy.
What is the biggest concern that you and your colleagues have when it comes to this carbon tax and now the hike that goes into effect today?
Well, once again, grain farmers in this country are not only looked upon to feed Canadians and fill the shelves with good quality food, but we're also looked to send grain around the world and do the work that other nations can't do and help countries. And this makes us, once again, globally uncompetitive. These are costs that our competitors don't have. These are costs that our farmers could use that money that is otherwise spent on a carbon tax to do further environmental initiatives, more than what farmers already do. And once again, we see farmer depression levels at all-time highs, mental health issues front and center, farmer suicides. This is one more burden of risk on farmers that is out of their control.
The government, the federal government, I should say, repeatedly says, Mr. Harrison, that the carbon tax actually puts money back into people's pockets through this rebate. Does that rebate help you and other farmers in any way?
The rebate that they speak of does exist, but it provides a return to farmers less than 15% of what farmers actually pay in carbon tax. So that when they speak of playing political games and wordsmithing, that is nothing more than a game. The rebate is a joke. It provides nowhere close to what farmers are impacted by this carbon tax.
And we know when the Prime Minister talks about climate change, you and other farmers obviously are absolutely concerned about climate change because it impacts your livelihood. If you could talk to the Prime Minister, what would you say to him?
There is no one more concerned about the environment than farmers. We have been stewards of the land for generations. Farmers do a job that very few choose to do, and it is a noble profession, producing food for our fellow citizens and people around the world. And we take the concerns of the environment more serious than anyone. We work and live in the environment, and it is a means of our livelihood. It has been a means of livelihood for our family farms, and we certainly hope that it is that way for generations to come. So as far as the concerns of climate change, farmers are front and center, and we're doing all we can. I mean, there is no one more willing to do good things for the environment than farmers, provided we can be economically viable to do so. We have to be in business to continue to do the good things that we have already been doing. Economic sustainability is vital for farmers to be environmentally sustainable. So it is paramount.
Thank you so much for taking the time and explaining the impact of this tax on you and other farmers. Jeff Harrison, the chair of Grain Farmers of Ontario, thank you very much.
Thank you.